Hi guys, Kat here. I hope everybody's doing well, adjusting to the situation in the world and kind of like finding our space within it. I want to cover in this video basically astrologically what is happening. It's almost like a sign off on the previous kind of like astrology tidbit that I had. So let's start with the Taurus new moon that basically started on April 22nd. It kind of like brings sudden unexpected changes. The reason for that is joined by Uranus, right? That this new moon that currently we are experiencing is also in a challenging square aspect to Saturn. So this is why I really didn't do, hey, let's do this new moon kind of protocol and everything. So what does it mean? When new moon comes, it's always a good news, technically, right? Because it represents the end of one cycle and the beginning of another 28 or 29.5 day cycle, to be exact. Sun basically conjunct moon means it's actually close, right? Gives that invigoration, it gives the burst of energy, it's initiative. So this is an excellent time for making a fresh start. It's kind of turning over a new leaf or starting a new project. Also, we can get rid of like stuff that doesn't work, all behaviors, beliefs, or something that is holding us back. Those cords that we call, well, it has always been in my family, I have been always like this, he has been always like that sort of things, right? Limitations. So now, as I was explaining to somebody else, when you are in this mood, let's say new moon is usually a good start, but when you're in this mood, and let's say you're in this mood, you're driving a car and then you stop at the stop sign, you're like very enthusiastic, and then bam, right in front of you, you see collision, and you're good. Nothing happened to you. Nothing happened to your car, but the car parts and blood is everywhere. It is affecting you, right? So that's what happens when something happens in quote-unquote conjunction vicinity, right? It could be good, could be bad. Jupiter expands, right? But now we have like that tricky kind of like squares, and squares are always some kind of like challenges, right? So now, because the April 22nd was like Taurus at 3 degrees 24 minutes, and when it conjunct Uranus, the Taurus very solid, just don't move me, I move slowly, but Uranus, hey, I just want to jump off the basically mountain today, kind of a thing, unexpected change, right? Like a teenager in the house, right? You know. So on its own, the changes are not necessarily good or bad, but because this new moon square Saturn aspects are really the most challenging of influences in astrology, and that's possibly why every astrologer is warning about that, right? So the new moon is just the latest in a series of very difficult moon phases. So it's reinforcing the challenging nature of this new moon, and it's joined by fixed stars that sort of like have that Mars-Saturn nature. Tower moment, guys, huh? So this planetary combination indicates frustration and anger and violence and crime and cruelty, loss, disgrace. Lovely. So let's go about the aspects. New moon brings excitement. It brings unexpected change, rebellion, and if you feel a strong urge to break free from routine and restriction, like maybe you're going to feel that just cannot happen, but you're going to feel still that restlessness, impatience, and kind of like nervous tension, right? Also, acting impulsively and taking risks would result in unexpected and unpleasant changes that cause upsetting disruptions to your life. So hence, be careful about aggressive reactions, but also literally accidents and chaos could be something that we might experience, right? But doing nothing with this electric and spontaneous energy can also result in some unwanted consequences. So you're saying, what the heck you want me now? You don't want me? You want me to do something? You don't want me to do something, right? So we need to be flexible and open-minded. So now you know how it feels to be Aquarius. Let me put it that way. Enjoy. So next time, like maybe you're going to have a little bit more compassion for us, right? So maybe the best way, we need to seek safer options for change and excitement on the internet or through new technology, through maybe science, and of course through occult. So hence, stay tuned for my monthlies are coming up. So new moon square Saturn suggests the changes caused by Uranus are not going to be the positive ones. Saturn imposes restrictions and delays that make it harder to seek the Uranus freedom and excitement you desire. Hi, Sapphie. You may feel restricted, kind of like weighted down, like these limitations and why I cannot do this. And that's why we are going to have lots of protests and everything will be, everybody's bursting out as it seems, right? So that isolation and loneliness and pessimism and depression kind of is possible, right? You might also face criticism and trouble from especially the superiors or authorities in general. It can also be a sense of loss and disappointment. So making progress and reaching goals is very difficult in this kind of like positioning, but we still have to strive for a strong work ethic, patience, and determination to meet our responsibilities. So not procrastinating or becoming distracted, right? If we ignore our responsibilities, Saturn is all about responsibilities. Just think about somebody, a prison warden standing over you. That's going to give you what I'm explaining to you, right? So if you ignore our responsibilities, it's going to come back to bite us later. It's kind of like, hey, you faked and now I'm going to show you. So when Saturn square Uranus, it brings sudden changes we don't want. It makes it harder to make changes we do want. So hence, hello, it's very frustrating, and that's why we have this tension and unexpected changes. You want to go left and you see something opening on the right, you quickly go to the right and it closes. It's like, okay, so kind of a thing, right? You know, we all have been standing in one line and then we saw another one being way shorter, we go there and just closes before our nose. That kind of stuff, right? So this is not the time to overreact. So we need to be methodical and patient and kind of like step-by-step approaches best, sort of like a Page of Pentacles approach. So we need to use our higher selves, our higher self-awareness from Uranus. Uranus is really good news. It's almost like it's tough because it's a carrot on the stick you really wanted, but it's just a little bit out of grasp, right? So what we need to do, we need to take responsibility for vulnerable family, friends, and neighbors. Also, one of the confusing aspects of the Western astrology is that when you look up in the sky and you look at the new moon, you're going to see that moon is positioned in the Aries constellation, not in Taurus, right? That's because the constellations have moved about 30 degrees out of alignment with the signs since they have been invented about 2,000 years ago, right? So that's a story in itself, which I would really have to study all the details to give it to you, but just take my word for granted for now. Or check it if you want to. Precession of the equinoxes, kind of like would be the chapter you need to look. So also there is a thing over here, I'm seeing fixed star Sheraton, that also causes bodily injuries. It's kind of like unscrupulous defeat, and it could be destruction by fire or war or earthquake, and it's associated with the throat, and there is also connection between the throat and the head and the tonsils, kind of a thing. And the closest star to the new moon is fixed star Mesarthim, with sort of that Saturn-Mars nature. It kind of like shows up more as a protective quality, like it's less of that impulsive, aggressive of Sheraton, which kind of like has that really strong Mars, I'll punch you in the face nature. So new moon in April of 2020 is conjuncting asteroid 18 Melpomene. It's named after the muse of tragedy in Greek mythology, right? A tragedy is not a comedy, it's the opposite. It's a sad event or situation, and it's involving somebody's death or suffering, kind of a thing. So the new moon is going to so let me refresh. It's going to bring unexpected changes. But all the openings that we see, we'll have to approach in a very slow and methodical way in order for us to actually move forward, right? So the reason why this actually can be challenging with this Melpomene asteroid is because of this coronavirus pandemic, right? With this new moons on Uranus in the horns of the ram that square Saturn. Again, I stress it's important to be patient, it's important to be careful, so avoid taking risks, right? So on May 22nd, we are going to have the new moon, and so basically this period we really have to be very, very cautious. Let me now cover up a little bit about Pluto retrograde. So Pluto retrograde started on the 25th at 25 degrees Capricorn, and it's going to end on October 4th at 22 degrees Capricorn. The major influence on Pluto retrograde this year is Jupiter conjunct Pluto. Okay, conjunct, close, coupling, right? So that increases the fear of death from the coronavirus pandemic. It means exponential growth because Jupiter expands everything that is close to. So now, when we kind of like see this combination, Pluto is its third planet. Just think of the death card, right, in tarot. So now we have this and saying expand this. So it's not one, how many it is, right? So you can see that suffering can be seen in that way. So, but also you need to understand that Pluto retrograde in this year 2020 is a test of faith. So generosity, kindness, and spiritual evolution will help you come through this very distressing period in much, much better shape than most, right? So also, I think that it's very important to know that in this period, which is going to last, almost like 6 months, it's going to make us very focused and driven. And its most positive manifestation is extreme good fortune. It's a generosity, it's transformational change, and it's of course us feeling that we are evolving. So how to evolve? Suddenly you are not feeling resentment, you are not feeling jealousy. You actually do want naturally for good things to happen, not only to you but to everybody around you. If you're already feeling this way, if you have already evolved to that stage, then you're going to feel a need to kind of like reach out and to do something more. Also, that's going to evolve in business. It could actually portray business success and wealth and travel, and it could be actually really even promotion for some people. I have already seen it here in Ontario. Our essential workers got a raise. Not much, but they did, right? But not to mention the recognition and things that will go with that in the future. However, it's always that however, I didn't want to use but. This Jupiter-Pluto conjunction is squaring Mercury, right? Which that Mercury is the communication planet. It's also something very quick, just like the Uranus. Uranus is the boss of Mercury in astrology. And so that increases that fear of death, and it can cause extreme and sometimes even ruthless or even self-righteous and obsessive thoughts and words. So you see how this is now conflicting to that evolution and feel good about everything. It's totally kind of like black and white, there's like no gray, right? So the negative Jupiter-Pluto manifestations of that selfishness and greed and jealousy or nationalism, even racism, I don't know, victimization, persecution, and revenge are a little bit more likely. So the square to Mercury also makes long distance travel challenging, right? So it's actually really going to be nearly impossible because of coronavirus pandemic. So all I'm saying is until November, stay tight, right? So Mercury square Jupiter Pluto is also linked to the respiratory problems. Ta-da! And that's, as we know, coronavirus, because Mercury rules the lungs. And Jupiter rules growth and expansion, while Pluto rules viruses and pandemics, the masses, global events, and death. So Mercury also rules hands, and the square aspect makes it easier for the disease to spread because many will be careless about washing their hands and touching their face. And now, I really have to say something that I was reading, but I am not a medical doctor, so you are better checking it yourself. I was reading a German study which so far concluded that technically they didn't find that the virus spread through touching, which kind of like would be in opposition to what I have just told you about Mercury ruling hands. So they are a little bit kind of like flabbergasted with their findings. They're going to repeat the study before they give a conclusive thing. So if they're right though, that means it's really spreading via air much further than we anticipated. So just that's a side note over here. I digressed. So Pluto retrograde in this year will coincide with mass death and from the exponential growth of this highly contagious disease. And when it squares Mercury, makes it harder to make sense of a loss, right? And it kind of like a grief is putting in everybody's life, whether or not you have lost someone, and it's testing our faith and making it harder to believe or understand death as a transition. Jupiter conjunct Pluto, which retrograde square Mercury, will also see extreme powers used by governments and corporations to exert control of freedom of movement, of education, social life. You will see also freedom of speech being kind of like stunned at some places, right? This kind of like thing also comes with secrecy and lies and propaganda, which also kind of like triggers paranoia. So again, as I said, check my information, check everybody's information from multiple trusted sources, and don't do any kind of like spread of misinformation on social media, because it's going to come to bite you later. So the best way to handle the effects of Pluto retrograde is to act morally and ethically. So again, being kind and generous will help you evolve spiritually, and that will increase your chance of material growth, of happiness and success, even during this retrograde phase, right? It certainly will make it easier to rebuild after Pluto stations direct on October 4th, right? So Pluto retrograde is transiting, right? So this is a regular cycle lasting 5 months every year during the opposition to the Sun. As with all outer planets, it causes less concern, right? It's not that close to us because it's rarer than inner planet retrograde. So transiting Pluto retrograde is a time of reflection. It's about the power and control in your life. So you need to ask yourself a question: have I been controlling? And what am I controlling and why? Most of us have to exert control to some level. Some of us are type A or type A1 personalities. And this is time really to kind of like chill, right? This is not time for power tripping, but time for elimination. So fated events and repeating themes are going to reinforce which of our controlling habits and compulsions or addictions or prejudices must be eliminated. We will be looking ourselves in some kind of like spiritual mirror. So if we have been too smothering and controlling in a relationship or holding on too tight, we'll just be forced to let go, right? If there is some kind of obsessive or compulsive behavior that is involving possibly food or drugs and that is controlling us, and it's maybe medicating our anxiety and our stress, then, events may force a turnaround. So the more intense our destructive behavior, the more extreme the detox or withdrawal stage will be, such as kind of like even going cold turkey. Perhaps suspicion or secrecy or racism or gambling or porn are taking control of a person or holding this person back from the spiritual evolution. So that's the good time when we need to trust in our spirit guides and think of the extremes that our ancestors endured to have their genes expressed in you. So destroying things that they have control over you will increase your spiritual power and lead to personal mastery and the connection. So your ancestors are waiting for you to really come into that light. So that's really, really important, right? So Pluto retrograde natal is more common than inner planet retrogrades such as Mercury and Venus, right? It's about 40, like what I'm talking about, natal in your chart, so you have to check it, right? So about 40% of people have Pluto retrograde in their birth chart, so it's kind of like less feared and less harmful than, let's say, having an inner planet retrograde. Again, it's like that parallel that I told you about, you stopping at a stop sign and something happens in you, right in front of you. So you would still probably hear about a crash, but you would hear it on television, so it doesn't affect you as much, right? But having said that, natal Pluto retrograde, so what it means, like, go and check your natal horoscope. Go down in the description and you can find a link and see if it's R next to your Pluto when it says, because that would mean it was retrograding during your birth, right? So if so, with natal Pluto retrograde, you might have difficulty transforming your life due to fear of letting go. So the internalization process of retrogrades can slow you, bringing your intense drives and needs to surface. You'll probably have also difficulty expressing your personal power and influence. So depending on the particular past life conditions, you also may have fear of death, poverty, manipulation, torture, imprisonment, betrayal, going nuts, even kind of like being committed to the mental institution, kind of a thing. And also that power and control could involve psychic realms, sex, and inheritance. So guys, if you think that either you or somebody who has an influence over you is kind of like feeling like that, I would advise that you either get my karma reading or my past lives readings, because that's going to really give put things in perspective, right? So it might be very intense going through this whole period, both inside and on the outside, whether or not somebody is a control freak or you are, because past life conditioning can repeat, especially while young, in the form of compulsions and phobias, isolations, or mistrust of your family. Some people can develop a very strong psychic power as a result of that kind of like internalization, because their wish for power and success need to get somewhere out, right? But at the same time, these powers need to be kind of like accepted as a gift, and it's kind of like really difficult when we want to control everything around us. So guys, I would not again worry much, other than we are not going through a lucky break period. We are going through work hard, nose to the grindstone, do the right thing, pray, meditate, shed your controlling habits, do not control others, do not let yourself be controlled. As I told you in my previous installments of the astrology, we are going through the birth canal, and it's going to come out the next year when all of these kind of situations are going to stabilize. Yep, I know, 1 year, long time, yep, but that's all we need to do, guys. So let me know what you think. Let me know if you have any manifestation of this in your life, and buckle up, guys, and monthlies are coming up soon. I love you.